You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Llopis. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Personalization Outbreak Podcast, where today we're going to explore the power of authenticity and purpose in a world that requires us to find that harmony between standardization and personalization. So what does it truly mean to lead with clarity, courage, and connection? How can leaders begin to reconnect with their personal purpose, align it with their business missions, and then scale authenticity across the enterprise? How does this translate to reshape companies that fuel innovation and unlock what really matters to driving exponential energy? Now, to address these issues and much more is my new friend, Rob Craven. Now, let me tell you what I've experienced about Rob. Keep it simple. Rob, in my experience with him, really is good about keeping things simple and making you really think about what matters. And he was introduced to us by a mutual friend who brought two people of like minds who share the same foundations, but we approach them in very unique ways, which is the power of personalization. So Rob is a CEO, he's a strategist, and he's the author of the book, Scale Passion, a Blueprint for Building Purpose-Driven Businesses. I love that. And over the course of his career, he's proven that leading with purpose is not just about inspiring people, but also creating a competitive advantage that really drives results. And so if you've ever wondered what it takes to build, a business that aligns profit with meaning, this is your guy. And so pay close attention, because he's really going to share a lot of his frameworks and his thinking and how he really takes what some in today's world sounds like it's soft, but something that actually really propels and transforms organizational growth. So before we get started, please click the like button below, share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Llopis. Rob, great to have you. Thanks for your time today.
I'm excited to be here, Glenn. You and I, as you mentioned, share a lot of commonalities, and I can't wait to dig in.
Well, first of all, I'd love to understand you. Look, you need to be able to do this type of work. Its foundation comes from somewhere. And, as I was going through part of your book, and it really resonated with me, is the impact that your father had on you when you were just a little kid. And I'm going to read this from the book. He said, it's cool because you've got a list of tips and resources from your father, Lou Craven. Let's honor him. And the three things that you said that he said to you was always make a difference, be bold, and always do what's right. Tell us a little bit about your dad and how he became part of building your foundations for this type of work.
Well, I appreciate you opening the door for me on that. My dad was a pretty special guy. He fell in love with my mom over the course of 3 days. He met her on a Sunday, asked for her hand in marriage on a Wednesday. She was 17 at the time. He was 18. He went into the Navy. They came back, got married, 19, 18, very young, South Carolina, North Carolina kind of thing. But my dad was from North Carolina. And after they had me when they were about 20, 21, my dad found out he had cancer. I started battling cancer. It's why I don't have any siblings. And he battled it for a long time. And when I turned 6, he was about 27 at the time. He was told he only had a couple of years left to live. So imagine being a 27-year-old man with a young son. You're kind of young yourself. To some degree, I grew up with my parents. They were still growing up, when I was born. And so he decided right then and there, and I've had this conversation with him, later on, that he would pour all his 27 years of wisdom into his son, especially if he couldn't see me along the way. And so quick story. If you remember back in the day, shaving cream used to come in a can and kind of fill up your whole hand. And he would take that barber saw and show me how to put it on. I was very, very young, like not a hair anywhere near my face, right? And then he'd hand me the razor with no blade, and he wanted to teach me how to cock my head and how to pull on the right parts of my face to have the razor, flow across that to get as tight a shave as possible. He wanted to teach me how to shave probably 7, 8 years before I had a hair on my face. So I remember those kinds of experiences, and I had lots of experiences and lots of memories of that growing up. And throughout the theme that you mentioned, make a difference, be bold, do it right. It became the big themes for me, and then went on to guide me in my leadership journey. And it was kind of an anchor for me. And it goes back to purpose, right? We all have these stories that kind of point to our purpose. Even traumatic experiences like my father, learning he might be, pass, can lead and point to purpose. So I get real emotional talking about my father, and you can read more about him in the book. I kind of dedicate the whole book to him, and as you mentioned, lose tips and resources at the end of every chapter. And it was really cathartic for me to remember him through the book as I was writing it. It was really, really a wonderful experience.
Well, we can share that experience because when I wrote my first book, Earning Serendipity, it was dedicated to my father too. And it's incredible when you meet someone like yourself who had a father that had an indelible impact on their life. It doesn't feel like work, does it? I mean, if
No.
anything, it feels like this incredible blessing and gift that they gave us, knowing that we had the ability to do it. So it's thanks for sharing that. And so as you think about that story about the shaving cream, right? I'm sure your dad was thinking about many things during that trying time, and I'm sure part of it was the purpose that he was going to leave behind through the things he was teaching you, not knowing that he was going, to live many more years after that.
Right.
How do you think this term, because I really want to start foundationally here, how has the definition of purpose evolved over time? Now, as you think about that, I know you got an answer. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's throw a word like trust, right? Everyone uses that word. And,
Hmm.
in the past, trust, just to throw something out, it was someone whose word you can count on. But I actually think that trust now has to do not just with that, but the type of connections that you have with people. So,
Sure.
all these, foundational words, because of the world that we live in, have now evolved. And so I'd love your take on it in how you're seeing this evolution play out.
What a great question. I think what comes up for me around that question, Glenn, is when you think about purpose as a young person going through business school or even high school or entering the trades, I call it capitalism 2.0. There's a sense of our purpose is to provide for the family and to make enough money and to, making a difference is something you might learn at church. I know Rick Warren wrote The Purpose Driven Life. I've got a whole story around that if you want at some point. But the concept of purpose was really more spiritual back in the day than it was connected to work or even connected to your personal life, unless you were a very unique individual. I think when I think about back over the timelines of that. And what I'm here to do is try to kind of connect people back to the energy that is true purpose, which I think is very unique, which I know aligns with your thinking and your theories on individualism and personalization. That uniqueness of purpose is an energy source. And so I see it more as the harnessing of our gifts and our talents and our experiences and our stories, good or bad. In fact, the bad stories or the traumatic events in our life sometimes point more clearly to purpose than anything else. Um, all these things we harness and we're able to point it to do something good in the world and make a real difference. And I think we've never been taught really how to connect those dots. And then in my world, it's how to connect those dots and then harness that energy and do something magical with it. Most of the folks I work with are founders or CEOs or change the world leaders, I call them, and want to maintain that harness and that harness of that purpose and do something in the business. It's just unconscious. A lot of times it's unconscious. So making purpose conscious is the first step personally, and then harnessing it and then bringing it to work. And even if you're a manager or whatever, you still own a business inside that job you're in, or you're a CEO or a founder or a real owner of a business. You kind of actually own the business, but I think of it as anyone who owns a business, and even if you're a janitor, you own the business of being a janitor, right? You can bring purpose to work and be more fulfilled and harness that energy. So that's the evolution of purpose to me. Going back to your question, it's from something that's kind of out there, or maybe through church, to something that can be very personal and very intentional and very conscious. Does that make sense?
Well, this is what I'm taking away from it. It went from being institutional to personal.
Correct. Yeah, perfect.
And so I share that because that aligns with, standardization and personalization. It was something we should consider to something that we must be. And by making it a central part of who we are as we search for that purpose, that brings a level of energy that then fuels and unleashes more of who we are and what we're capable of being. And if we do all that, we can create enterprises and scale this passion, as you talk about in your book,
Yep.
that really transcends traditional norms to finding and seizing opportunities that maybe we wouldn't have considered. How's that?
100%. And this is where you and I have a common goal. It's about unleashing that. I think a lot of times I talk about making the unconscious conscious. It's in there. Sometimes a lot of folks I meet are on purpose, or they feel energy with work, or they feel energy in the things that they're doing, but it's unconscious. They haven't harnessed it. They haven't taken the step of really getting proactive and harnessing it such that they can utilize it to full effect. It's just kind of happening through them or with them. They're not proactively steering it towards something that can make a huge difference in the world. And when you're pushing on that, the energy you get is just immense.
Oh my gosh, if I may, and forgive me, this is about you today, but you've just spoke to me. And I want to give our listeners an example of how I've lived what you just said. And again, I really appreciate the way you described that. When I felt the energy from the learnings of my own father, and he taught me about the immigrant perspective on business leadership as immigrant from Cuba and starting his
Sure.
life all over again with my mom. And that led to my first book because I thought my father, much like yours, would maybe leave us a little earlier in life. And my father, like yours, prevailed. But I didn't know that that was going to happen. So I wrote this book for him, and it was all about opportunity management. And as I saw that happen, I saw this other thread happen, and that led me to keep writing and writing. And that led to the other four books that I have. But I just share this because it's when you unleash that energy in full effect, you should be moving so quickly that you're in a constant zone. And that's what you made me feel as you offer those perspectives. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, in Silicon Valley, they're in constant pursuit of flow. There's psychedelics and there's drugs and they're all kind of trying to, and there's breath work and there's meditation and there's all these hacks, to try to get into flow. And I've tried them all, right? So I'm one of those guys that tries everything, mindset, just trying all these different things. I've tried all the different strategic approaches and things like that. But when they talk about flow, to me, I like to reposition it more as energy.
Yeah.
And flow to me is just focused energy. And so the clearest way that I can get to focused energy is when I'm doing something on purpose. And so step one is defining that, like, what is my purpose? And am I in the right place to express it? So I've been blessed to, CEO a few companies with some success, and I've been able to bring my purpose into a business purpose where I can clearly see my connection. And if I'm a founder now, Scale Passion, it clearly connects. It's the same, right? Because I'm the founder. But in the case of me being a CEO, working for a founder, an entrepreneur, I had to see myself in the entrepreneur's purpose. And so if you work for a large company or a small company, does your personal purpose vibrate harmonically with the purpose of the business? That sounds woo-woo, but if it does because you're showing up with bells on every day with lots of focused energy and flow. And if you're not, I would ask you to step back and really evaluate your purpose so you can compare it to your business and align it to the right business. To be fulfilled each and every day is my goal. I tell my clients all the time, I stand for your personal fulfillment, not for your business success. The business success is a result of your personal fulfillment of honoring purpose. The result is the result. And so even though a lot of people hire me to help them grow and scale and do strategy work, that's almost the easy part once you connect purpose in.
So is this why you believe that the future belongs to the personalized, not to the standardized?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. I've read the book. I know what you're saying.
I mean, well, how did you, I mean, seriously, give us an example of why the future doesn't belong to the standardized.
Especially, we're recording this in May of 2025. Okay. And so if you go back and look at some of the history when someone's listening to this a couple of years out, you'll know that we're kind of in a time of turmoil, especially from a government perspective. NGOs have got a lot of uncertainty. I'm a believer that business is the hope for the world. I'm also a believer that the leaders of those businesses can use that business as a force for good, whatever that might mean. And if we were to get a tipping point around that on business, it's almost like the parts of a body. Black Rifle Coffee cares about veterans. Patagonia cares about the planet. I care about Capitalism 3.0, teaching businesses how to do good in the world. So if we all play our little part, the body will move and take business in a whole different place that is absolutely not standardized. In fact, Capitalism 2.0 to me is over standardization. I call it the left brain side of business. It's squeezed all the risk out. There's a way to do a deck. There's a way to ask for money. There's a way to grow a business. It's all very standardized, business school, blah, blah, blah. And part of what I'm trying to do is bring the right brain back in and balance it. I'm not saying the left brain is bad, but it needs a little more balance. And to me, that's personalization, that's purpose. It's doing something good in the world with the business. And it's very unique because each leader has a personal purpose. Each collection of leaders have a personal purpose that turn into a business purpose that can affect the world in different ways if you will allow it. And I also believe firmly, and all the proof is there, that if a business is trying to do good in the world, social impact, the economic impact follows. All things being equal, most people would rather do business with a business that's doing good things in the world. So economic impact follows the social impact and it scales up, it spirals up. And you can have both. You can have economic impact and growth and do good in the world.
This is how good he is, and I hope you heard that perfectly. Look, Rob, what you've just said there is why there are only few big movement makers in the world that are shaping economies. But this is also what you said is that there will be many more of them.
Yes.
That's what I took away from this. Super inspiring. But goes back to what is that people are at an impasse. There's so much unused talent, so much wasted energy. When you see that in an organization, how do you get that back to where it needs to be? Like, because look, the people that are listening right now are experiencing this in real time. Like,
Right.
they
Right.
know that they're dealing with this. So to hear your words, let's translate this into something, more tactical in terms of how you turn these things around. Especially, I'm sure you can choose the companies you want to work with, and I'm sure you've selected some tough ones that need what you teach, but they can't see it. So help us understand how this works.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a specific client that I won't give away, but
No, 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 no.
I'll just say it's a B2B client. They're about $15 million in sales, very stuck, I would call it. So they called me because I have a history of scaling companies. 15 to 100 million is kind of my sweet spot over the course of 20 something years being a CEO. So I've got some methodologies around that, and they wanted me to help them scale. So when a client like that hires me, I always tell them, I'm going to drive you crazy with the purpose stuff because I believe that's the source of energy to help you scale. And you can do good in the world, which brings an energy and a culture and more economic impact. And they're like, yeah. We'll deal with the purpose stuff. Just help us scale. Okay. That's usually the way it works with a lot of my clients. So I start digging in specifically with the founder first. In this case, there's a CEO as well, founder and CEO. So I start there with purpose work. And then, long story short, over the course of, call it 6 months to 9 months, we start trickling that purpose work in alignment with the purpose of the business, we start trickling it down to the whole executive leadership team. In this case, it's about 8 people on the executive leadership team. So now we start off a retreat with a reminder of everyone's purpose personally. So, and I have them tell a story of when they've used that purpose most recently. And there's a whole methodology to how to get to personal purpose, but they tell a story about that. So all the energy starts to percolate. Then we combine those energies into building a business purpose that now truly inspires. Most businesses don't spend near as much time on purpose. They spend more time on mission and vision. And we could talk about the different distinction there, but the purpose answers the question, why do we exist? For the business and personally. So then on a whiteboard or on the screen, I'll put everybody's personal purpose and then the business purpose underneath it, and then ask for the connections. Do you see yourself in that? Now, in actuality, with this client, everybody saw their purpose in there, but sometimes it's a bell curve and they don't. And that's usually the person that doesn't fit in the tribe. If there's one person in the executive leadership team that doesn't see their purpose there, then everybody in the room knows that they probably shouldn't be in the tribe. And what I say in that regard is, I love you too much to let you stay here. Let me help you go find a place where you can exhibit your purpose and really push on that. But that's a high level. It's a harnessing the personal purposes and the business purpose. And that creates an energy that makes things like a business plan and how to build a great culture and all the things that the left brain side of managing risk, or what do we innovate on next, or what region do we go? It makes all those questions easy. It makes all those processes easy when you're able to harness that energy, that collective energy. And the retreats I run, 2-day retreats, are typically on fire by that point. It's like vibration. Yeah, does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And the reason I asked the question is that, look, when we're trying to help people find that harmony between personalization and standardization, and when people have been taught a very standardized way to do things,
Yes.
being able to absorb this more purpose side of the brain can be a struggle to people. So I wanted to really take the great thoughts that you were sharing and get people to understand what goes through your process to get people there. And you call it the harness your personal purpose. But I felt it was important because this takes time. And as you said, there may be certain people that have a different purpose and or maybe what we would call them are the ones that are creating the challenges within the organization to grow, that, they need to perhaps exit and find their ability to share their purpose elsewhere. So
Right.
Absolutely. But what I wanted to double click on now is what happens now. You're scaling the business and all of a sudden there's some leaders that start losing touch with their purpose. They're now seeing so much growth. Maybe they believe that the product or service is selling itself, and we don't have to be so in touch with our purpose. I don't know what happens here.
Oh, it happens all the time. It's partly why I wrote the book. I love a lot of the books out there on conscious capitalism and Start with Why. And there's lots of books around you should be on purpose, or you should start with why and answer the why question. I tried to write the book to be more a how as well, because the how is where it gets a little lost. The blueprint, right? The how. And so what I see a lot of times, especially in smaller companies, especially I do some work in Silicon Valley, where there's lots of investment before there's product market fit. When you bring on an investor, especially an institutional investor, they think about the payoff. It's a very financially.
Of course.
So you start saying, I want to spend some money over here on purpose type stuff. And they look at you funny, right? So that happens all the time. So a lot of times, most founders I know, probably the vast majority I know, start their business out of a want to do something special in the world to make the world a better place. And over time, the business constricts them, whether it's I can't make payroll, so I have to take a customer that doesn't necessarily fit where my energy wants to go, but I need to make payroll. So they start making little decisions like that. Or they bring on an investor or a loan or some debt that makes them start to kind of drift away and to become more left-brained than whole-brained, if you will. It happens all the time. And so I get called in a lot at what's called the adolescent transition. This guy, Adizes, mapped out the corporate life cycles. And the adolescent transition is the place where a founder, what got you here won't get you to the next level. And so Purpose is the energy that helps the founder decide whether they want to be king or rich. And if they want their baby to grow, they might have to bring in a CEO, for example. About a third of the folks I work with want to do that, but it's a decision that they make because it's a new skill set that's needed. About a third want to learn how to be a CEO and to scale. And so I can talk to you all about that. But purpose is the energy that provides the focus to make those kinds of decisions proactively versus feeling like you've got to be reactive to the world around me and to this is not how we do it at business, right? The Capitalism 2.0 standardization, that comes in from all sides. That'll never work. That's not how we do it. But purpose is the red hot core that cuts through all that. Like it just kind of cuts through the noise and makes it much easier for the founder to see what it wants to be and make proactive decisions on going there.
So let's talk a little bit about CEOs. A recent article from Wall Street Journal showed a couple weeks ago. Actually, I wrote about it in my Forbes article that, more of them are just resigning. It's like, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. My priorities are changing.
Yes.
And so now there's a different type of CEO that's required in organizations. Now, can you give us your take on where you see that role, let's say 5, 10 years? And I'm not just talking about, small startup, but, large Fortune 500 company. I mean, because the things that you're talking about doing are things that, let's call it legacy organizations, for the most part, are out of touch with. And, they can call it corporate social responsibility or some other form of philanthropy. But this is much more than that. I mean, you're talking
Yes.
about operationalizing everybody's soul to deliver excellence, right?
Yes.
So what is that CEO? Where is it trending to? What will be the key traits of that individual, that position and role?
Wow, complex question, Glenn. I think for me, it's one of those things where it depends on the size of the company and the sector it's in. If you think about like, I'll call it big, just not out of any judgment, but they're big, big food, big pharma, big agriculture,
Yeah.
big. It's, in my opinion, if I were just to distill it all down, it's all very left brain. I call it Capitalism 2.0, which started with Milton Friedman. It's about the shareholder and stop, full stop. Don't go any farther. It's about the shareholder. Do everything you can to maximize shareholder value. And there are companies like Unilever and larger companies like Patagonia. Patagonia is a $3 billion company now that are leading the way in how to do it differently. Okay. And how to think more about a concept that um, uh, uh, his name escapes me, Harvard business professor. I want to say Cotter, but it's not Cotter.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is Cotter. It is Cotter. Philip Cotter.
no, I'm talking about John.
Okay.
Uh, anyway,
It's
he,
okay.
he he came up with the concept of creating shared value.
Mm,
And shared value basically is integrating social impact so deeply into your strategy that as the company grows and expands, which it will, all things being equal, you'd rather bet on a company that does good in the world, that the social impact grows with the company. It's so integrated in, but it's not CSR. It's not corporate social responsibility. It's not triple bottom line. And he's out there teaching people how to do this. Okay. He's teaching large companies how to integrate these things. I can give you a quick example if it'd be helpful. I believe it was Nestle. Nestle spent $1 billion with an African country upgrading a port and creating infrastructure like a road to connect to an agricultural area in their underserved area in the central part of their country so that they could lower the cost of goods on those ingredients, those
mm.
food ingredients, right? It's a win-win. There's social impact and there's economic impact. They were able to save money on the cost of goods at a much higher level. So we're teaching big companies how to do this, but it's a generational change, which I think the younger generations are starting to promote and push. Younger generations are more about fulfillment and experience at work. And so hiring the younger generation means you need to acknowledge that to a large degree. And so generationally, these things will push. I also see a big opportunity to go there with small to medium-sized businesses, which far outnumber the larger companies, and together collectively way bigger than the larger companies. So getting some kind of sea change there or tipping point on that just makes it that much easier to prove that creating shared value or this concept of linking economic and social impact together to do good in the world for a business. I call that capitalism 3.0. All the shareholders are important. Your community is important. It's all important. that movement is picking up steam. And there are larger companies that are playing with it and starting to toy around with it and show that it can work.
Well, let's just put it this way. This is what I took away from what you said. The CEO must be more socially conscious.
Yeah.
And the CEO, whether they, yes, it's all about shareholder value. It'll always be about the number. Okay. That'll never change. But how we get the number will change. Why will it change? It's really simple. Consumerism is no longer just the person that buys, it's the person that works for you.
Right.
Because employees are consumers now. They have options. I mean, many people now are having trouble finding workers because they're making money selling, buying ads on Facebook on their mom and pop shop. And had a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur. He told me the other day, I just bought $162,000 worth of ads this month. It generated $600,000 in revenue, and I netted at 410. I mean, we live in a whole other world. But the employee needs to get a point where they feel that they can trust what the CEO is selling.
Yes.
Because we need those large organizations, obvious reasons for our economy. There's a lot of different reasons for this.
Yes.
But I share this because what do you think is going to take for these CEOs to embrace and adopt this Capitalism 3.0 that you've shared? I mean, you just give us a few things. We don't have to go deep, but I'm trying to get you to help plant the seed for people that this is unavoidable. It's coming. So
Yes.
that means we have to start thinking about how we start transitioning now. What do you think? Give us your take on that.
Well, what's coming to mind for me is I do have a client of 150, is a new CEO of a $150 million company. He came up through a very large company that bought the company, and he was assigned as CEO. But it's a great white paper or study, because he dropped into a very entrepreneurial organization, one that was on purpose and living the culture and had never experienced it before. So to me, the seed I want to plant is the fulfillment that comes from tapping into your own purpose. So the work I did with him was first around his own purpose. Like, what fires you up? What are the stories? What's the energy? Where do you want to change the world? And then how does that connect into a bigger purpose of a company that already had a bigger purpose in this case, right? If I'm a CEO of a company that doesn't have a bigger purpose, it's just something you read at the town hall once a year and it doesn't mean anything. Then based on your own personal purpose and where your energy goes, how do I elevate the purpose of that business? How do I take it to a whole nother level, right? And make it personal? Is kind of step one for me in terms of being able to lead a business on purpose. It's got to connect at that level, for the CEO. And so teaching a CEO how to incorporate the whole brain, not just the left, not just the things they learned at Wharton or some amazing business school or wherever they got their training. The left brain stuff is pretty straightforward. We got it. It's how to integrate the right brain in and to bring some of that passion, those feelings that comes from being fulfilled and that energy that comes from being fulfilled. Then it starts to trickle down. Now you can start to make sure the rest of your team feels the energy. You can use the town halls to express how this is flowing through the company, and it turns into core values, and it turns into other things that you can really stand on, that begins to trickle out into the product and how you talk to the customer and how you present these things to the customer with authenticity. There's a lot of it that's inauthentic out there right now because it's not connected personally. If it's not connected personally, it'll be inauthentic. And it starts to trickle, is really the key thing. But I actually think there's an innovator's dilemma going to happen, because a lot of the younger brands, smaller brands that can maintain purpose will eat the lunch of the bigger brand. They'll give up.
Yep.
It's the innovator's dilemma. And so some of that is happening in different sectors as well.
So how does this connect to what you call the personal flight plan?
Yeah, it's personal purpose is one thing. I have some tools happy to make available for free to your audience. I have a tool called the Uncover Your Personal Purpose Workbook. It asks a series of questions to help you at the end say, I exist too. And so what I want is I exist to, as simple statement as possible. I exist to scale impact. That's my personal purpose. But we work through your stories and your energy and where does your mind go when it comes to changing the world and all these different questions. So there's an Uncover Your Personal Purpose Workbook. Your purpose, the I exist to statement, is just step one in 8 steps to harness purpose. And so the personal flight plan is basically a business plan for myself. It's not only why do I exist, but what do I do? And what are my core values? And what's happening in my life right now? And what's the vision for my life? And what are my daily energy drivers? And what are my personal OKRs, right? So I've got some personal OKRs that I'm working on. So it's writing a personal business plan so that you can harness purpose. And that gets in a lot of times into daily energy drivers, like what drives your energy. I've got one client who was just low energy. And I say this all the time, as the leader goes, so goes the business. So if you're a founder or CEO and your energy is low, your whole company's energy will be low. If you're sad, it'll be sad. If you're mad, it'll be mad, right? So I'm like, I won't use his name, Bill. When's the last time you felt great energy? He goes, well, I went surfing a few months ago and I love surfing and I haven't been in 90 days. And I'm like, go surfing. So that's a daily energy driver for Bill. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
So a personal flight plan is basically getting really proactive and making a conscious effort to build a business plan for me, very selfishly. And I think a purpose should be selfish as well. It should bring you even more energy than it does the other person that you're helping or serving. That's a personal flight plan. And then we call the business flight plan the connection, purpose to purpose, the purpose of the business, and then 8 questions to simply run your business, all the way down to the OKRs for the business. So it models personal flight plan, business flight plan.
So what do you hope to accomplish with this purpose movement that you're building?
Well,
By the way, I'm on board. So just
great.
I'm with you. Count me in. I'm in.
It's funny. I always say the result is the result. So being in the present moment, all I can really do is be on purpose. And my purpose is scaling impact. So the book and the company and all the consultants that are working with me now are doing everything we can to advance the purpose. Okay. So my purpose is to scale impact. The company's purpose is to radically evolve capitalism. We want an evolution to capitalism 3.0. So if that sounds sexy, let's go do it and let's go have some fun. My goal is to create a tipping point to where there's enough businesses that prove that you can win on purpose. You have to make money. You have to make money or save money or grow your business. You can grow your business and be on purpose. It doesn't have to be nonprofit. It doesn't have to be separate. That's the left brain. That's how we were taught, right? So you can't, in fact, there's lots of proof that companies that are on business or on purpose do better business than the ones that aren't. Okay. So I have to show that proof quite a lot. And I put a lot of it in the book. And so it's now when you believe that, you can connect your personal purpose and you will do better. The economic impact will be there. If you get to a tipping point, then the larger companies and the other companies have no other choice than to start flowing with that, or they'll lose business or they'll lose people. And so my delusion or vision or goal is that we get a tipping point on this such that now government can look at purpose in a new way. If business is about changing the world and supporting a more amazing place, government can then support that infrastructure versus government trying to be the solution. And government, I don't believe, can be the solution. There's too much politics. It changes every 4 years. It changes every 2 years. So to really get solution, I'm not a big believer that government can get there. But if government can support businesses that can get us there and take care of their employees and take care of their community and do the things that need to be done, that government is now responsible for, before I die, I'd love to see that transition.
Well, let me share with you why I think it's going to happen.
Good.
And number one, I've loved your take on things, Rob, and if people aren't getting a lot out of this, I think they need to go surf or do whatever. We'll get them. We'll get them going. And by the way, I exist to create future legacies.
Love that.
And that's why I love that question, because I love everybody to think about this. Let me give you a big indicator and a small indicator why I know this is all going to happen for you.
Good.
And not for you, but for the betterment of society.
Sure.
I know it's not about you. Let's start with the big one. When I started this whole leadership in the age of personalization movement, it has taken a life of its own. But when did I start seeing a need for what you're doing? Number one, employees today want purpose. Employees want to know who they are. Employees today want to live their lives purpose. People within these institutions want to matter. But as you've called it, or as Friedman calls it, capitalism 2.0 doesn't allow for that.
Correct.
So there's this constant struggle between the business defining the individual and the individual defining the business in search of a shared mission. The talent is out there to support the movement.
Yes,
So
agreed.
my whole point is that with your clients and others, between what'd you say, 15,000 and what?
15 million to 100 million.
Okay, 15 million, 100 million. Okay, let's just use that. Believe me, as you continue to help scale them, people will want to work with them.
Agreed, 100%.
Okay? Which means what? When they all leave these larger institutions, which many of them already have, they'll start realizing that personalization is driving the flow for scaling passion. How am I doing so far?
You're doing great. You're doing great.
This is just a matter of time.
Agreed.
Now let me give you a smaller one. Okay. I'm about ready. I can't say I've done it, but I'm about ready to do something this weekend. And what's it called? I'm having a reinvention roundtable at my home. And people are saying, well, what is this, Glenn? Well, it's a gathering of friends to talk about what reinvention means to you, your career, and your life transitions. Well, what is this all about? Well, it's about, building connection. It's about building community. It's about maybe getting more in touch with our mindset, the things that really matter to us. And so there's going to be 30 people at my home. And of course, my wife invited them all, and they know my work at some level. But we sent them a questionnaire, and it has 9 questions. I won't go over all those. But the energy from this process, and I'll share a couple of them. One of them said, and I don't have my phone with me. Oh, wait, I do. I have it right here. One of them says, after my husband and I put the kids to bed, we started reviewing the questions, and boy, they're making us think. Somebody else says, this is the type of conversation I've been longing for. My whole point is that there's a lot of people that support your thinking, but they're the silent influencers. They're almost afraid to talk about these things because we just don't talk about those things in capitalism 2.0. So
Agreed.
I share this because think about not all, but most conversations at a societal level, surface level, very little energy. No one wants to go deep, no accountability. We're just kind of there.
Yep.
Your movement is going to start building up traction as we start continue to scale these interconnected ways of thinking till everybody realizes in the end, this is about one thing. It's about how do we best serve a much more informed and knowledgeable individual that is craving to unleash their passion.
Yeah.
And once that happens, the game is over. So I actually believe that what you're doing is just getting started. I am very appreciative of the time that you took to enlighten us.
Sure.
And for those who are listening and scratching their head or trying to figure out what this conversation's about, it's really simple. What matters to you? Put it to action. Inspire others to do the same. Build momentum. Watch purpose grow. The economy will follow, and the rest is history.
100% agreed. Yeah. I think
Rob,
I'd even take it one level deeper, which is I think everyone has a purpose, and it's what's missing, and they know what's missing. It's a hole. Some people call it a hole in your heart. Like it's missing, and there's a seeking for it that's unconscious. And so I was recently at a retreat with 6 guys, quite frankly, old white guys over 50, talking about personal purpose and the stories behind it and why the stories that touch their personal purpose. and not a dry eye. And this was not a business that was known for emotion at all. It's, at all, kind of an engineering business. And so the amount of empathy for one another was just beautiful. And then what blossomed out of that was a closeness and some work around the business purpose that so connected these, 6 old white guys that the energy coming out of that room was spectacular. And once it's open and conscious, it can't be put back in the bottle. It's just too powerful. So I actually think there's a hole in everyone's heart that wants to be filled here. And so I'm on a movement to try to kind of make it okay and give people the safety to allow for that blossoming that wants to occur.
Rob, that was beautiful. Way to end the show. Thank you so much for your time and keep doing great things.
I appreciate it, Glenn. It's been a wonderful pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, as we end every show, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't, do what others won't, and you'll keep pushing when prudence says quit, just like Rob taught us today. Have a great day, everyone. Rob, thank you again. We'll be in touch real soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Llopis. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.